can have everybody's attention, please. Terrific. Thank you. Well, welcome. I'm very excited to launch officially Achieving the Dreams Intervention Showcase. And thank you very much for taking the time to be with us this afternoon. Go ahead, Cheryl, to the next slide. I'm Nicole Melander. I'm the Chief Technology Officer at Achieving the Dream. I joined a little over 2 years ago. Previous to joining Achieving the Dream, I taught for 4 years at American University, and I spent about 20 years, a long time, with Microsoft and Oracle. So I come from the high-tech industry, and I've been obviously very intimately involved with this work. And one of my colleagues, who's not in the room right now, but Meredith Hatch, was also very involved in this work. I want to thank her for making this a reality today. And I'll let Linda introduce herself.
Good afternoon. It is such a pleasure to be here, both as a member of an Achieving the Dream Leader College, Brazosport College, but also as a representative of Achieving the Dream as a data coach. So I serve as a data coach for colleges in Washington and in Georgia and in Michigan, and it's such a pleasure to be here with you. In my primary role, I serve as the Vice President of Academic and Student Affairs at Brazosport College.
So one of our foundation partners actually made this quote, and I won't read it all to you, but there are a couple of key points. It talks about community colleges being isolated, and that there is always the chance that colleges are reinventing the wheel, and that the opportunity to share and for Achieving the Dream to be the convener of those conversations is really one of our main goals. We do that, of course, through DREAM, which many of you, I'm sure, have attended. And that is an event, a live event, where people can connect and talk about the intervention work that they're doing and the strategic work that they're doing. But we know that's not enough. So we recognize that this is our challenge, that we have almost 200 colleges in the network, and those 200 colleges are doing great work. And our challenge is to make this connection and to find ways to bring these colleges together. I'll let Linda, as a data coach and as a representative of our colleges, talk about some of her experience in making these connections.
So thanks. This really has been a challenge because we know that Achieving the Dream truly is a network. And that means we're a family in the sense that we're 200 colleges that are trying to solve some of the very same issues that we're seeing nationally in terms of student success and completion. When I began as an Achieving the Dream college, in 2006, when my college began, we wanted to do, among many other things, a student success course. And one of the things that we came across was we wanted to talk with other Achieving the Dream colleges who were doing something similar. So we knew that they were successful with that type of intervention, but we wanted to talk with people who had similar backgrounds. They came from institutions that were of a similar size and also maybe had a similar makeup to our students. And at the time, the only folks that we could really talk to were our Achieving the Dream coaches. Well, they're very, very knowledgeable folks, but they only work with a subset of those colleges, so they knew those folks to talk to, and we didn't have a tool like this to connect us.
Perfect. So the Intervention Showcase is really about making that connection.
Technical difficulty.
Making the connection.
There, sorry.
So the handshake, really having Achieving the Dream truly be that convener to bring these colleges together. So I'm going to take the next 10 minutes or so to do a demonstration for you. And there'll be 2 demonstration flows. And I'm going to take a seat so it's a little easier for me here. The first revolves around a college that is in their planning year with Achieving the Dream. So for those of you that are not as close to our work, when a college joins Achieving the Dream, their first year they spend planning, and of course we call that the planning year. And during that year they're doing a number of things. One of the very important things they're doing is they're analyzing their data, and they're understanding which subgroups, which students are being most challenged in reaching success. While they're doing that, the question we get often asked is, what are other colleges that are like me doing to try to address some of these same issues? So the first scenario that I'm going to take you through is for that college, so for a college that is in their planning year. So I'm going to take you to the showcase. So here it is. It's now launched, yay. And you'll see this is a dashboard, and I'll just point out a few things on the screen. So at the very top, you'll see that there are 3 tabs. One says, I want to explore the interventions that are in the Achieving the Dream Intervention Showcase by academic discipline, and you can see the examples of the disciplines here. You'll see that there are different colors that are representing those academic disciplines by type, right? So whether it's a student success course, as Linda was talking about, whether they're STEM oriented, so science, technology, and math, or whether they're on the humanities side. So the colors help you see that. And then the size of the boxes indicate how many interventions are underneath each of those, right? So if there are a smaller number of interventions, there's a smaller box, a larger number of interventions, a larger box. On the right-hand side are a number of filters, which I'm going to explore as I take you through this particular scenario. So this is the first dashboard. The second dashboard looks at it by intervention type. Right, so here again you can see the same sort of look and feel, but now we're looking at interventions that are focused on students or interventions that are focused on the institution itself or interventions that are focused on faculty and staff. That's the color scheme that we're using here for the blue, the green, and the orange. And then again the same metaphor of the size of the boxes. So we've got 463 interventions from 107 of our colleges. And we want to be more specific. So we've said for this particular scenario, I'm interested in colleges like me, and I'm interested in understanding what they are doing to address similar sorts of challenges. So the first thing we can do is say a college is like me based on how the government categorizes me in IPEDS. Right? So the government has this concept of degree of urbanization, which those of you that are at colleges are very familiar with this, I'm sure. So I'm going to deselect all of these because there's a large number. And notice the dashboard goes away because I've deselected everything. But now I'm going to bring back the ones that I want to see. So I'm interested in 3 of these IPEDS categorizations, the first being a small city, the second being a large suburb, and the third being a mid-sized suburb. And this is the college has a choice in terms of what data they want to look at. Right, so for this college, they may be categorized as a mid-sized suburb, but they know that colleges that are also in a small city would be pretty similar. So they've decided to look at these 3 degrees of urbanization. And now you'll see at the top it says showing 178 interventions at 41 colleges. But that's still a lot of interventions. So we want to get more specific about being like me. So now we're going to look at enrollment, right? And this is a big barometer for differences between colleges in terms of their enrollment levels. So for enrollment, I'm going to do the same thing, deselect them all, the dashboard goes away, but then I'm going to bring back those that are in this range, the 10,000 essentially to 20,000 in terms of enrollments. So now we're at 66 interventions across 14 different colleges. So it's getting more reasonable. But let's add just one more filter to this, and here it's the target students. So while we're still doing our data analysis and we're very early in the process, we are interested in certain groups, and we know that we're going to be focusing in 2 groups. So deselected them all, and in this case I'm going to choose academically underprepared students and first-time students. So I'm interested in interventions that are focused on these target groups. So now we're down to 41 interventions at 14 colleges. So now we're going to start to really browse and explore the information that's in the showcase. So we're going to go to the final tab, which is the college and, I was also going to show you that here you can pick any one of those boxes and look at what's underneath it. So if we highlight first year experience, we see that within all of the filters that we've put in place for those 41 interventions at 14 colleges, there are 12 interventions at 8 colleges that are categorized as first year experience. And we can just explore from here, which we'll do in the next scenario. But in this case, we want to look at the broad set of all 41. So we're going to go to the final tab, the college and intervention details, and here we see the list of colleges and the interventions they put in place. So we're looking at the first 5 of those colleges, and we see the names that they've used to describe those interventions. And as, again, somebody who wants to browse and explore, I'm just going to look at a few of these to get a sense of what they are, because sometimes the description doesn't tell me everything I want to know. So the first one that catches my eye is this one, increasing equity for students of color, low income, and first-gen students. And I get a pop-up that tells me a little bit more about the student populations that are targeted by this intervention. And our colleges can pick multiple because they're not always just targeting one group. I see the percent of target students served And we included this here because it gives you a sense of scaling. So as Achieving the Dream, we have 3 levels of scaling that we use as our way to frame the work that's happening on the college campuses. It's using the sum to more to most concept. And sum means 25% or less. Right? More is this category of 25.1 to 60%, and most means 60% or more. So you get some information here about not only this intervention, but how far is it scaled? How many students are actually being served by this intervention? And then we get a little bit of an excerpt of the intervention description. Right? And for this scenario, we're not going to look at the detail. We're just going to look at a few more of these. So we can look at another one. In this case, we'll look at the mentoring program at Delaware County Community College. So this one serves specifically first-time students. It's not scaled as far, so it's in the sum category of 25% or less, and it gives us, again, a little bit of a description of it. And then the final example is Northampton Community College. They're serving academically underprepared students, 25% or less, so again, it's at the beginning of its implementation. And then we get a description here, and I just wanted to point out that in this description, they're saying that they are implementing something called the Accelerated Learning Program, which is actually a program that was put in place at the Community College of Baltimore County. And they've adopted that intervention, and they're learning from that intervention to put it in place at this college. And that's really what the showcase is all about, is to make those connections. And this shows you that those connections were happening already outside of us supporting it. They're finding ways to find each other, and we're hoping that through this platform they can find each other more easily. So I'll ask Linda to provide a little bit more context and some examples of this kind of process and how you might use it.
So imagine, though, that I hadn't heard about the program of accelerated learning, and I, on my own, though, was interested in developing the same sort of thing. I could now go to this Achieving the Dreams intervention showcase and now look at and find this sort of program and know that there's someone out there that I can contact. Alternatively, imagine that maybe I'm interested in developing a student success course, and I'm really interested in talking to people who come from an institution that's exactly like mine, has the same degree of urbanization, serves the same percentage of target students that I'm looking at serving at my own institution, but I want to really focus on how they developed the beginning steps. So maybe I'm not sure of what were the barriers and challenges in implementation, so I really wanted people to talk to people who are on the ground to get into the nuts and bolts. This is the kind of program that's going to allow me to do that.
Terrific. Thank you, Linda. So the second scenario, now we've moved beyond the planning year, so we're in our second or third year of implementation with Achieving the Dream, or maybe fourth or fifth. If you can hold the questions. Sorry?
So the last planning part, who's using it?
Can we hold the questions right to the end, Lou? Thanks. So for the implementation year, so now you're in the second or third year of implementation, so you now have a different question, and the question is, I've started to implement, say, a student success course, and I'm having some challenges, and I'm interested in what other colleges have done to overcome those challenges. So I want to connect with other colleges that are doing this same intervention or something close to the intervention that I'm putting in place. So in this scenario, again, we go back to the main interventions page. Right, and for our scenario, this is actually, we're interested in something related to math. Right, so we can look at, on this dashboard, all the interventions across all of our colleges that are related to the discipline area of math. And we see that there are 91 colleges with 183 interventions. And unless I have a lot of time on my hands, that's probably too many. So we want to filter that down. So this time, instead of filtering by characteristics of the college generally, we're going to filter by the students and the characteristics of the students that attend that college. So here we're going to look at first their Pell status. So we use Pell as a proxy for low-income students. So in this case, we want to deselect again all of them. And for our example, we're going to select the number of students that receive Pell grants at that particular college to be between 20 and 40%. But that still leaves us with 169 interventions at 40 colleges, still too big a set. So let's get more specific. And in this case, we're looking then at the percent of Hispanic or Latino students. And for our scenario, we're going to get rid of the highest set, the more than 25%, and the lowest sets, we're looking just at the 12.6 to 25%. This is a fairly heavy percentage of students that are Hispanic or Latino at this particular college. And then we'll look at Black African American, and for this scenario, we're going to do 0 to 20% because we're interested in colleges that serve more Hispanic students than they do Black or African American students. And notice this list of Black African American is shorter because it filtered it out. It was based on the other questions we answered, so it lets you know what's left, so you don't end up filtering everything out and end up with an empty dashboard. So if we use this criteria, you can see we've got 19 interventions at 5 colleges. That looks pretty reasonable. So we can now look at a specific group of math. So we can highlight just that math block. So now we've gotten even more specific. And now we're looking at just 4 colleges and 7 interventions. So this looks pretty reasonable to spend some time looking through. So we're going to go ahead and just scroll down this page and look at the list of the interventions that are at the bottom of the page. So we didn't have to go anyplace else to see them. And here we can see the 4 colleges that are included. And the interventions that they've put in place that meet all the criteria that we have defined about their student body and math interventions. So as we look at this, we're interested in Northampton County Community College intervention around math. So we can click on that particular one. Again, it brings us that pop-up bubble. And here we see that the target population is academically underprepared students. And more than 60%. So this is a very scaled intervention. So since we're in our 3rd year, that's really of interest to us. How did they scale this intervention? So we want to make that connection. And again, that's really the focus of this. It's not to collect all the detail about all these interventions. It's to give enough information that we can make those connections. So in this case, we do want to go a little further. So we click on that Read More, right? And that takes us to a page that starts to give us a little bit more information. And in the text at the top of the screen, this one's interesting to me because it was implemented in the year 2007-2008. That was the starting year for this intervention. So this intervention has been in place for a number of years, and it is heavily scaled. So again, very good information for somebody trying to decide whether they want to connect with this college. Also in what they've written, they've told us about the changes they've made more recently. Right, so one of the really fundamental ideas in Achieving the Dream is as you go through each year, you're refining the work that you're doing. You're evaluating your interventions and you're refining them. They've done refinements and they've reflected them here in the showcase. So we can see the kinds of refinements that they've made. We can scroll down and see just a little bit more information about this particular intervention. Oops, sorry. Including the outcome indicator from Achieving the Dream that they are trying to impact. So Achieving the Dream has 5 outcome indicators, and they tell us which of those outcome indicators they hope this intervention is impacting. So in this case, it's completing courses they take with a grade of C or better. So the final piece of this, of course, is that they ultimately make that connection. So at the very bottom, and for some reason it's cut off on this screen, there's a form to fill out. And you fill out a little form that says to Achieving the Dream, you would like to make a connection with this college. And that contact information is provided to colleges inside the Achieving the Dream network. So you make that request, and we connect the 2 colleges together. We also, of course, have other people that will be potentially contacting the press, et cetera, who might want to reach a college to interview them around a particular intervention, and we can act as the broker of those kinds of conversations to ask the college whether they would like to have a conversation with the press or whoever it might be. So the general information is provided to everybody. The contact information is exclusive to those that are part of the Achieving the Dream network. So that's one example of an intervention. If we go back to the dashboard, we could just look at one more example, which is Harper College, Partners for Success, the Compass Math Project. Again, we can see that this is a heavily scaled intervention. So for this scenario, this is what we're interested in, more than 60% of the students served. So I can click to read the full information about it. And here, Harper College provided quite a lot of detail about their intervention, which we very much appreciate that they did that. So it tells us all about this intervention. We can see that it's a newer intervention, even though it's already fully scaled. So again, I might be interested in how did you do that, right? How did you get your intervention scaled early in the life cycle of that particular intervention? You can also see that this one is focused on K-14, so they're working with the high schools. So it might be something that you're interested in thinking about for the work that you're doing. So again, we get more detail about this and which outcome indicator they're focused on. So in this case, remedial or developmental instruction and advancing to the first credit-bearing courses. So that's the intervention from the second scenario. And I will turn it over to Linda again to give a little context around that.
We're really happy that, by the way, that Achieving the Dream is brokering these deals between us. I'm thinking back to a message that I sent out about one of the interventions my college has was a student success course, and I sent the information out to the parents of all the sophomore students in all of my districts. And then I said that they could contact me, and I got hundreds of calls, so that was not a good way to broker a deal. So we're really glad that we have this platform. So imagine that I'm an Achieving the Dream college that is now implementing the intervention of a student success course, and we've been able to move the needle in, say, developmental education in both math and English. But let's say I haven't been able to move the needle for college level classes in math and English. So now I want to reach out to other colleges who have been successful in that particular outcome indicator. So I can, again, go to this showcase and reach out and ask ATD to broker a connection with another college or several who I might be able to talk to who has been successful in moving the needle in that particular outcome indicator. Alternatively, let's say that I have been successful to the point that I've gotten, but I want to now scale beyond, let's say, 40%, and I really want to scale up to the most category. And I want to talk to other colleges with a student success course that has been scaled above 60%. And I want to talk about, again, what are the challenges, what are the barriers to doing that, what works well, what doesn't work well, can you put me in contact with someone who can help me navigate that scaling? So that's what I would love to do with this particular showcase.
Terrific, thank you. So it's the last piece of information to share with you is just another look at what's in the intervention showcase, just provided in the more standard bar chart kind of format. So you can see on the left-hand side by academic discipline how the intervention spread across those academic disciplines with, not surprisingly, given the history of Achieving the Dream, focus on student success courses, which has been something we've learned is very effective, so many colleges have adopted that, and a focus on developmental math at 40%. But there is a fairly heavy emphasis also on English and reading at 28% and 21% of interventions that are focused in those two areas. On the right-hand side, you can see by intervention type, again, 35% around developmental ed, first-year experience. So you can see sort of the work that Achieving the Dream has done, focusing on the early part of the life cycle, but also moving over time into other areas. I was really happy when reviewing the data to see faculty professional development at 13%, because we've really been focusing on making connections for faculty engagement, and we're seeing those kinds of things happening at the colleges. So I thank you for being here for the launch, and happy to now take questions.
So who uses this?
So we are launching it today. So right now nobody uses it, right? But this will be used, I think, by 3 different groups. So first, of course, is our network and our colleges to use it to find each other. I really do hope that the press uses it because they're looking always for content for stories where they've started to write a story about challenges that are taking place within the higher education world, and they don't always have the right people to go to. And if they can come to a resource like this and see, oh, there are 40 colleges that are implementing a student success course, can you help me get in touch with the right people to talk about the struggles that they're having and the things that are going well? So I think that's the second category. And then the third is probably our partners that also work in this field, like the American Association of Community Colleges, et cetera, that can use this information to inform some of their thinking and look at trends. That's what I would expect. Anything you would add to that, Linda? That
I think as a coach, I can tell you that I'm going to be using the tool
right,
to
yes.
help,
I forgot
when the
yeah.
colleges come and ask me, hey, Linda, do you know of another college that is doing this? I'm going to be able to, at the ready, tell them, yes, it's here, and also teach them how to use the tool.
Any other questions?
So just for clarification, I'm Tia McNair from AACU. Institutions outside of your network can use this tool publicly available?
It is publicly available. Everything I've shown you today is publicly available. The only thing that we don't do is make the connection for you, tell you who to contact at the college to get more information unless you're part of the network. But you're from a third-party organization that works in the same space, so I'd encourage you still to make the request to us and let us know what you're trying to do. And we just want to act as the broker to make sure our colleges don't get contact from sort of everybody. Right? Yeah. Mark.
How are you collecting the information? How do you want to keep it updated?
Yeah, thank you very much. So the interventions actually came to us in 2 ways. The first is that every year the colleges do an annual reflection process, and they submit a number of documents to us that are the result of conversations that have taken place at the end of the academic year about the work that they're doing. So they're checking in with us every year and providing a number of things, including the interventions that they've put in place. And we have done that since the beginning of the founding of Achieving the Dream. But that has always been in document form. So we were very fortunate to start working with an organization called Year Up. And Year Up provides interns for 6 months. And so one of our Year Up interns had the very fun job of cutting and pasting interventions from all of those documents from every college for 1 year, so not this year, but the previous year, and to start the database. So that was the initial cut at the database was from that. And then this year, for the review process, the reflection process, we provided to the colleges, here's what we have in our database based on what we cut and paste from your last year's documents. Please take a look, let us know what is correct, make any changes to it, let us know if some of your interventions have been stopped, because that's really information that's very helpful too. And then add new interventions that you might be putting in place. And then so every year, that is part of the process for them to update this information. And I expect that as this becomes a more regularly used tool, that cycle will actually just be an ongoing cycle where colleges are regularly logging in and making updates as things are changing on campus.
Yes,
Rachel?
They do it online now, so.
Yes, they do it online now, right? So yeah.
Annual review, reflection, they send it to us electronically, and they can go in to that, within that review process where they can make changes, as Nicole said, update the information. We're no longer doing this, but we've added these. So it's not a paper pen any longer or an electronic report. It's actually in the system.
Yeah, and it's all self-reported, and you know, we thought very carefully about how much we were going to enforce the depth of information that was there. And we thought that if we required too much, it would be a big barrier, so we'd have fewer colleges participating. So we tried to err on the side of just enough information that a college could make an assessment of is this somebody I want to get in touch with or not, right? And then they make that connection where all the real things happen in terms of having a deep conversation. So we're trying to have that balance between enough detail to make that connection, but not so much that it becomes onerous for the college. So yeah.
Are you trying to move toward evidence of success?
Great question. Yeah, thank you. So an obvious piece that's missing is the data that goes with these interventions, right? So in that same scenario, when the colleges provide to us information about the interventions, they submit to us data about those interventions. But that data has never been collected in a consistent way. So it's in PDFs and spreadsheets, and Sarah and company have tried to very hard create templates so that we can make that more standardized, but we haven't yet cracked that nut. So we'll probably do this in 2 steps. The first will be literally to take their data as submitted in whatever form it was and make it an attachment, so you can at least look at what they submitted to us. But the second will be to make it more standardized so that there's a way not only to see what's attached to a particular intervention, but to be able to search based on that data to look for trends. The other piece that kind of goes over all of that is we've always had this concept of a promising practice. And we've got some definitional work to do about what in fact is a promising practice, which is wrapped in all of this too, because ideally you'd like to have some sort of badge that, you know, this particular intervention appears to be more promising than another one, to help again refine the search process. But we haven't gotten there yet. So thank you for that. That's a great question. Any others? Well, thank you for being Pope. Jim, go ahead.
One question on this is the interventions are part of your Achieving the Dream colleges, right? Do you plan or have any desire to have this open to colleges that are not part of the network to input their interventions? Or
Hadn't considered that, but it's we did a webinar yesterday with the Education Writers Association, and there were a number of people from universities who participated, who were really excited about talking about this around TRIO and Upward Bound and some of these other programs. And I hadn't really thought about that piece. So if we do go in that direction, it'll be after we do all the other stuff we talked about. But it's a great concept. If you have other ideas, we welcome them. Terrific. Well, thank you very much for being here. Really appreciate it. And there's